In 1899, we came for the beach. From the very first, we came for that magnificent stretch of sand. We came on excursion trains, and when roads improved, we came in our own cars. Our bathing suits have changed. Boardwalks and bulkheads have come and gone, but the beach remains and the sun is still warm. Our stories in this video include the beach and more. They are about the people who were here before there was a bridge. They are about the school teacher who took a boat to our classroom. Our first police chief who got the job before there was a town and who held that job for 50 years. They are about the people and storms and events that went into a town that has earned the title Seashore at its best. So come along and share the story. Imagine, if you will, a 12-year-old boy living in Cape May Courthouse way back in 1885. There was nothing much on the island but dunes and scrub growth that stretched for miles.
We lived in the courthouse then, and me and Grandpa came out to check on the 2 cows that he had dropped off in the spring. It was a treat for me to climb up onto our farm wagon pulled by Clopper, our Clydesdale. When we came out of the mainland trees, that salt marsh stretched for miles. The road was straight and level, but real bumpy going across those split logs laid down as a corduroy road. Off to the right, we could see some of the Hand family harvesting some early salt hay. We passed down through Scotch Bonnet and tied Clopper to a hitching post, while Grandpa and me set out to row across the great channel. Grandpa told me how when he was a young man, they used to swim the cattle across in the spring. It was low tide and didn't take Grandpa long to pull across the channel and beach the skiff. We wouldn't be but a couple of hours, but I helped him pull the skiff up so it wouldn't float away. We started up a cattle trail that wandered through a maze of bayberry bushes near where 96th Street is today. I couldn't see a thing, but Grandpa put me up on his shoulders. I still couldn't see much but bushes and dunes ahead. Grandpa told me that the Tatham family had built a farmhouse off to the north, and that there was a life-saving station about a mile south. A 10-minute walk had us on the top of a great sand dune. What a view in those days! The beach and the dunes and the rolling surf stretched for miles. With a steady breeze in our faces, we looked south and could make out a 2-masted coastwise schooner, her sails filled with wind, easing her way into Hereford Inlet to sail down the back channel into Cape May Bay. On the easy-walking wet sand, we made our way south towards where Grandpa figured the cows were grazing. We passed the bleached wooded ribs of 2 sunken schooners. It was a magical day, what with the sun and the roar of the surf and the cry of the gulls. We found the cows just where Grandpa predicted, down by the freshwater pond in what is the bird sanctuary today. I asked Grandpa how he knew these 2 were ours, and he showed me the ear marks he had cut on each cow. Later, as we made our way home and Grandpa was rowing us across the channel, he told me that someday there would be a bridge across this channel, and there would be houses and a regular town on 7 Mile Island. He was right smart, and I got to see it grow.
Stone Harbor didn't have founding fathers, it had founding brothers. When the 3 Risley brothers, Reese, Howard, and David, arrived on 7 Mile Island early in the 20th century, there were dunes, bayberry, a handful of houses clustered around 83rd Street, and a 1-track rail line. When they moved on, they left behind a fully developed town, with hundreds of homes, both large and small, churches, a school, and 2 railroads. Who were these founding brothers? We don't know much about David, Reese, and Howard Risley, as they seem to have disappeared from the life of the town by 1920. But they were young men when they arrived, and they had a definite vision for Stone Harbor. They purchased the land for $90,000 and dedicated the next 15 years of their lives into the development of the town. They ran the South Jersey Realty Company out of an office in Center City, Philadelphia, and Reese Risley was quoted in the Stone Harbor Herald as saying, "Nothing was left to chance." Their carefully detailed development plan was grounded in practicalities that encouraged a premier, family-oriented beach community of houses with open space, wide streets, solid infrastructure, 3 dredge basins, and good drinking water. Some of their achievements included recruiting a small army of men and horses to level the dunes and lay out the streets, digging an 800-foot well from the deep Kirkwood Aquifer, not the shallow 200-foot Cohansey Aquifer used by other towns, dredging and establishing bulkheads for 3 bays, and building a waterworks and sewage system for prospective home builders. The Risleys didn't build the houses, but they developed a creative way of encouraging potential owners to spur growth for a public offering. Purchase a $100 bond and get a free building lot. This creative idea was a huge success and resulted in Stone Harbor becoming the premier beach community on the Jersey Shore in the 1920s. They spent a fortune on advertising and are responsible for the postcards that are our primary window into those early days. When the rail trip from Sea Isle City took too long, they lured the Reading Line into the town. They developed the causeway into Stone Harbor and were instrumental in getting the first bridge across the Great Channel. July 3, 1911 was a great day for Stone Harbor. With the bridge open, cars could come onto the island at a new train. They invited Governor Woodrow Wilson to the grand opening, and the whole town celebrated. They advertised in Wildwood and Atlantic City, as well as Philadelphia and New York. They arranged trains and entertainment so that the well-to-do Philadelphians and their investors could easily travel to their seasonal homes. Future town leaders and officials continued to implement this family-oriented vision with strict zoning ordinances maintaining low-density, single-family, 2-story houses and a concentrated central business district. This consistent family-oriented discipline throughout the years was the important reason that Stone Harbor is the unique town it is today. If the brothers could come back today, we think they would be proud of what they started.
Stone Harbor had not one, but 2 railroads. They are gone now, but how they arrived is a story in itself. By the mid-1880s, railroads had reached all of the New Jersey barrier islands except 7 Mile Island. The first try to reach the island came from the Pennsylvania Rail Line, which already served Sea Isle City with a spur to Townsend Inlet. After several failures, a 1,000-foot-long sweeping curve of a bridge brought the railroad to Avalon in 1892. There were few houses on the island. The railroad quickly pushed south to where 87th Street is today. A station was put in, and a few more houses sprang up. The rail bed was extended in 1911 to 96th Street and later to 111th Street. When trains full of day trippers from Philly would arrive around 10 a.m. in the summer, the train would be parked on 2nd Avenue all day until their late afternoon return trip. Other beachgoers often had to climb through the train to get to the beach. As the town began to grow in the new century, a new, more direct line was needed. The Risley brothers spearheaded the drive to build Stone Harbor Boulevard. The Stone Harbor Terminal Railroad was created, which went from Cape May Courthouse and crossed the Great Channel next to the new 96th Street Bridge. This railroad was electrified and had many problems, lasting only from 1912 to 1917. In 1920, the citizens of Stone Harbor bought the railroad and ran the 4.5-mile line with 3 employees, reaching a peak of 5,000 passengers per summer month. The president of the line once boarded a Canadian train and bragged to the porter that there was a VIP aboard, the president of the Stone Harbor Railroad. The porter went off and came back with an official railroad guide and said, "Sir, you must be R.L. Lewis." and treated him with presidential respect. The line continued until 1931, when the Great Channel Bridge was closed to railroad traffic. The Stone Harbor Line did continue to run building materials to the Stone Harbor Lumber Company across the channel until 1950. In 1933, the north-south line was closed as unprofitable, and the tracks were pulled out. Today, our beautifully manicured islands on 2nd Avenue are the only evidence that two railroads once ran the length and breadth of Stone Harbor.
The bungalow colony of Stone Harbor, those distinctive small houses of Stone Weber and Bower Court, south of 108th Street, offer one of the most unusual stories of Stone Harbor. 80 of these 4-room bungalows were built around 1914. The original buildings were only 12 feet wide by 24 feet deep, and designed to sell for $1,200. An early brochure notes that they were built like a yacht for space conservation and utility. Each unit contained running water, electric light, a shower bath, and a Russian iron oven. Shortly after they were built, 50 of the bungalows were sold to the Stonemen's Fellowship of Philadelphia. Dr. H.C. Stone, an Episcopal minister in Philadelphia, started a men's club around 1913. Its purpose, like the Chautauqua clubs of New York, was religious, service-oriented, and populous. The club exploded to 100,000 members and was open to all denominations, and included policemen, railway workers, and employees of Bell Telephone. The bungalows in Stone Harbor were purchased to provide a summer vacation for thousands of its members at $8 a week. The club was very busy in these years. They had a hand in the construction of an amusement pier on the beach between 105th and 106th Street, with stores, a Stoneman's restaurant, and a hall, which held 1,000 people. Dr. Stone held programs there in the summer, offering its members a mix of lectures, performing arts, interfaith worship, and recreational activities. For a number of years, they kept the south end of the island busy. By 1930, the Stoneman Fellowship was in decline, and the houses were sold or taken over by the town. The bungalows continued to be affordable houses for many in the next 30 years, and slowly have been improved and are now a far cry from the simple houses that Dr. Stone bought in 1917.
August 3rd, 1912. A red-letter day for the young town and also for Cleon Krause. Mail was coming, but not by train, but airplane. The town was bustling. The new 96th Street Bridge was a year old, and hundreds of people attracted by the big news had come down by train. At 95th Street, 16-year-old Cleon was the lone lifeguard. At 10:30, Police Chief Mike Lennon shouted to the crowd that the mail plane was on its way from Ocean City. Men dressed in suits and women in their summer finery fidgeted and peered north. And so it came, a speck in the distance. A Wright 1911 B biplane. Engine buzzing, it skimmed the dunes. It had covered the 20 miles in just 30 minutes. The plane came in for a smooth landing on the hard sand and taxied up to the marker. The postmaster hurried down to accept the mail and hand up a bag of 500 letters to go to Ocean City. By now, the crowd encircled the plane, and Cleon and Mike Lennon had to clear a path for it to take off into the southern breeze, circle, and head back to Ocean City. Cleon watched with the awe of a 16-year-old who had found a true love. He had shaken the hand of aviator Marshall Earl Reed, and he had inherited a vocation and a dream. Airmail stopped within a few days, and young Cleon went back to school. But when the war started, he volunteered for ambulance work, and over in France he learned to fly. Unfortunately, he also drank from a poisoned well and came home to die. His father bought him his own plane, and in the time remaining, Cleon flew and took up sightseeing passengers off the Stone Harbor beach until his death in 1920. Airplanes continued to land on Stone Harbor's broad beaches into the 1930s.
Michael Patrick Lennon was Stone Harbor's first police officer. The Risley brothers hired Mike as night watchman in 1911. When the town incorporated in 1914, he was hired as chief of police. He held this job through World War I, Prohibition, the Depression, the Second World War, and into the boom years of the 50s. He and his wife Annie built a house at 225 97th Street. At that time, there were no houses south of 97th Street. Michael had no jail or office, so the downstairs living room served as Michael's jail, while the Lennon family lived upstairs. Michael's first arrest occurred when there was a robbery in Avalon and one of the suspects fled to Stone Harbor. Michael caught him, calmly handcuffed him to his wrist, and together they walked the beat for the rest of the night. That thief never darkened Stone Harbor's door again. Another favorite strategy was to handcuff his prisoner inside an empty railroad boxcar. Occasionally, an engine would be hooked up to the boxcar, removing the boxcar along with the prisoner from Mike's jurisdiction. Michael walked a beat that ran from 96th Street to 80th Street and back. He never drove, but walked this beat 7 days a week. The young boys in town loved to make sport of his accent, yet were ever in wonder as he seemed to magically sneak up on them as they were on the verge of mischief. He would seize them by the scruff of the neck and give them a powerful shake. Michael retired in 1951 at a grand affair at Fred's Tavern, hosted by his good friend Fred Menzel. He left with the thanks of the town, a large purse, and a tear in his eye.
"1910 was a busy year in Stone Harbor. The bridge to the mainland and 2 churches were under construction. On the 4th of July weekend in 1911, the bridge was dedicated on 96th Street, and on 3rd Avenue, 1 block to the north, St. Mary's Episcopal Church was dedicated, and 3 blocks south of 96th Street, St. Paul's Catholic Church was dedicated. Beginning in 1910, Lutheran families participated in religious activities held in the Oaks Cottage, until the church building at 93rd Street and 3rd Avenue was dedicated on Easter Sunday in 1917. Also in 1917, the Bethel Union American Methodist Episcopal Church was dedicated on 81st Street that served a small but vibrant African American population that lived on the island from the early 1900s. Presently, the Episcopal and Lutheran church buildings are original. The original Catholic Church building was replaced in 1952. The African American Church was demolished in the 1980s and was not replaced. As a child in the 1930s, I remember attending gatherings on the beach called the Assemblies by the Sea, which was a summer program of the Lutheran Church. Fun songs and stories made it a time to look forward to each summer. The first school began in the Oaks Cottage in September of 1910. The teacher, Miss Margaret McCraven, traveled from her home in Goshen to Stone Harbor by wagon and boat before the bridge was opened. There were 4 pupils in September, and at the end of the school year there were 12 pupils. In 1913, the first school building was constructed on 93rd Street. Soon outgrown, it became our Borough Hall when, in 1915, a new 4-room building was constructed on 94th Street. This school served our community until enrollments increased from 79 in 1949 to 118 in 1954, and another school was needed. Meeting the need, our present school building was constructed in 1957 on the southeast corner of 93rd Street and 3rd Avenue. Hundreds of permanent residents have graduated from the Stone Harbor Elementary School, where they learned the academic basics as well as how to be good citizens. Recently, as class size has declined, we share classes with Avalon students. but the learning continues and our students march on.
Sure, Stone Harbor had a boardwalk for 30 years. 1.5 miles long and 20 feet wide, it was the promenade for Stone Harbor. Built in 1916 at the cost of $40,000, as a drawing card for the city dwellers who came by train, the boardwalk gave an overwater experience for those who didn't like the water, but enjoyed the ocean breeze. At 106th Street, a pier extended from the boardwalk out into the ocean. Built on the ocean side of the boardwalk were stores and a theater moving picture building. Some stores and apartments were built on the land side of the walk, but over water at high tide. One shop advertised cool Hires root beer. Then, in September of 1944, fortunately after most of the summer visitors had gone home, a Class 3 hurricane drove monstrous waves crashing onto the boardwalk. A $6.5 billion loss along the New Jersey coast. The pier, the theater building, the shops on both sides of the boardwalk, and the total boardwalk were pounded into debris, never to be rebuilt. Never again could visitors escape the legendary mosquitoes and the greenheads by walking the boards, and the story of two little sisters meticulously sifting the sand under the boardwalk, looking for coins dropped by boardwalk strollers, would never happen again. But that's not quite the end of the story. The boardwalk was lined with the latest electric lights mounted on beautifully designed light standards. These disappeared along with the boardwalk. All the debris was hauled away. Then, 60 years later, a strong storm scoured the Stone Harbor beach. Uncovered as if rising from the ocean, one of the light standards appeared. Attached to its base was a portion of the boardwalk. It's now on display in the Stone Harbor Museum.
The waves rolled across the open sea, their huge swells pulsing along the moonlit horizon. Suddenly, someone walking near the beach shouted, "A German submarine! A German submarine!" Mayor John Biggs heard the rumor and said to himself, "Another one of those fantastic fabrications." After the next council meeting, the mayor wrote a letter to the public. "There has been no oil in our beaches. No submarines have been sighted off the resort. And other than the nightly dim out, there are no restrictions of any kind in Stone Harbor." The council also mandated that the top half of the headlights must be painted black on all cars driving in Stone Harbor at night. A number of the town's pleasure boat captains formed a temporary Coast Guard auxiliary and patrolled the ocean waters between Townsend and Hereford inlets. The Navy required that all people must keep off the beaches and boardwalk after dark. In 1943, 10-year-old Dave Schaefer, a current resident, and his father were taking an evening walk on the boardwalk, when suddenly gunshots rang out from the beach below, and a bullet smashed into the ramp railing just a few feet away. Two Coast Guardmen, with pistols drawn, ordered them off the ramp and took Dave and his father to the Women's Civic Club for questioning before they were sent home. Dave says he never knew why the shooting took place, but the next day he went to the boardwalk ramp and dug out the bullet that had smashed into the wooden ramp. In the fall of 1943, I had just finished naval training, and my high school girlfriend and I went to Stone Harbor to stay with my parents. It was Saturday night, and the full moon was bathing the beach and ocean with a beautiful creamy light. We decided to take a walk on the beach. I was in my Navy uniform, and we were walking along the beach, looking at the moonlight sparkle the crest of the waves, talking about when we might see each other again, when suddenly we heard the shouted command, "Halt!" 2 helmeted soldiers appeared with rifles drawn, and after a few questions, immediately ordered us off the beach.
Before there was a town or even a bridge to the mainland, there was a yacht club on the bay. There were sailing regattas and motorboat races, and in 1912, members of the yacht club rescued 2 aviators who crashed into the marsh. Generations grew up around the boats, and many of the yacht club's social traditions were started in those early days. Big bands, dance theme evenings, bridge, and youth activities. The original yacht club closed in the 1920s but was reopened in 1929, 85 years ago this summer. The boating and traditions continued even through the Depression. After World War II, Edmé Deschamps, back from the war, founded the Deschamps Boatyard in Smuggler's Cove. He started with a Quonset hut and expanded to a machine, propeller, and woodworking shops, as well as a large shed for boat storage. For more than 40 years, he serviced both the sailing and the motoring community. During the 50s and 60s, boat building was at its peak. Edmé was known for the Connecticut moths he built, 20 in all, and many a young person sailed them in the regattas at the local yacht clubs. In the 60s, he built 37 Cheetah Cats, a 14-foot catamaran. Sailors loved them for their speed and light weight. A large fleet of Cheetah Cats raced at the yacht club, including Edmé and his wife Babe on Spitfire. For over 30 years, Edmé not only enjoyed racing the Cheetah Cat, but was always on hand with parts and advice to hold the fleet together. Today, you can view parts of the original Cheetah Cat at the Stone Harbor Museum. The most prestigious boat he built was the Yankee Flyer, a C-class catamaran. After beating the American competition, he won the right to challenge Great Britain in the 1968 Little America's Cup race. They packed the boat into a container and shipped it to England with all of Stone Harbor cheering them on.
When I was a teenager in the 1950s, my summers were spent at the yacht club. My friends and I sailed, raced our boats on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and just hung out. The highlight for all sailors was Regatta Weekend, a 2-day event, both racing and social. Sailboats of many classes descended on the yacht club. Having 100 to 150 boats registered was the norm. I sailed a one-man moth with a red and white sail, so my parents could spot me, usually toward the end of the fleet. Saturday night was the Regatta Ball, a big social event for the teenagers. I always came to the shore with a special dress in case I was asked to the ball. It was a wondrous night to be there, all dressed up with a band playing and the breezes through the windows. The yacht club remains a grand old lady, still young at heart.
The 50s were an exciting time for Stone Harbor. Like the nation, we had recovered from the war. The sound of hammers and saws could be heard across the island, and empty lots were disappearing fast. In 1952, building permits soared, and over 200 new homes were built in 1 year. New studio-type cottages were being offered in the $10,000 range. However, the building ordinances of the 1940s and 50s held us in check, so that we did not succumb to the dense overcrowding experienced in other seashore resort towns. The Tides Motel was built on the beach and 96th Street, but only a few others were built, and there was no influx of motels to crowd our town. We were booming in a positive way. Tradesmen, businessmen, and store owners were still able to live here in town. We all benefited from the boom and took pride in our new post office, school, firehouse, and borough hall. Stores started to fill the empty lots on both sides of 96th Street. It became our boardwalk, a place to shop and to be seen. We had great restaurants like Hans and Henny's, and a second new movie theater. Many stores were open all year long, and we even had a bowling alley, a drugstore, and 4 gas stations in town. Today, not too many people remember the 50s, but it can be said that it was a special time for the town of Stone Harbor, a time of growth and prosperity that honored the vision established by the town forefathers as Stone Harbor expanded into the future.
Whitmer Stone, the famous ornithologist, seriously started studying birds on 7 Mile Island in 1916. He established the early recognition of the heron colony in what is now the sanctuary. By 1925, on the meadows of Stone Harbor, he studied flocks of little blue herons and reflected that a generation before, the herons were considered legitimate game. The Audubon Society and Teddy Roosevelt put a stop to that. In 1938, Roger Torrey Peterson, recognized as one of America's foremost naturalists and ornithologists, noted that the Stone Harbor heronry was one of the heartening success stories of conservation. Herons started nesting in the sanctuary about 1938 and 1939. And Peterson recalled a hot July day filming little blue herons as he continued his gathering of resource references for his many published field guides. In 1947, the Borough of Stone Harbor established the preservation of the bird sanctuary, and by the 1960s, the New York Times referred to the sanctuary as the Everglades of New Jersey. Again, Roger Torrey Peterson remarked, "Every heron in New Jersey was nesting here." In 1965, the sanctuary was designated a National Natural Landmark by the U.S. Department of Interior, the first in New Jersey. This brought notables like Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands and Arthur Godfrey. Charles Lindbergh wrote, "I send my congratulations to the people of Stone Harbor on their wisdom and foresight in creating this sanctuary. It is a wonderful and priceless possession for any community to hold." This is our challenge in the 21st century.
We had very little warning. On Monday, March 5, 1962, Stone Harbor experienced the greatest devastation in the history of our island. There had been no mention of the storm in the weekly newspaper, and the local radio reported a typical northeaster with high winds and heavy rain. It wasn't until the water in the basin seemed abnormally high and the winds increased to 65 miles per hour that it became evident that we were in for severe flooding. A new moon exaggerated those high tides. The fire hall was made ready for people evacuating their homes. During that 3-day storm, there were no low tides, only high tides and higher tides. I was safe and sound away at school, but my family sure had their stories to tell about the storm. My dad, Jim Wood, was out checking on conditions of our stores, Woods 5 and 10 in Stone Harbor and Avalon. He became trapped in the Avalon store overnight with 34 inches of water inside. He used trash cans to paddle around while waves were breaking on the front window panes. Feeling somewhat protected by our brick home, my mother, Marie, and sister Nancy had no idea what was happening to Dad at the store. Anxiously waiting, all they could see was water. 2nd Avenue looked like a river with trash cans, door frames, reeds, and all kinds of things floating along in the water. I came home on the weekend by the south end since Stone Harbor Boulevard was pretty much impassable. Riding through the meadows, I saw parts of homes, docks, and so much debris that I was overwhelmed. Then I reached Stone Harbor and saw the staggering devastation. There was little or no bulkhead left, and many homes had washed out to sea, leaving nothing more than a few broken pilings where they stood. One man talked about having Thanksgiving and Christmas in his new home, and now there was just a hole in the ground where it stood. 16 homes were completely lost, and hundreds more suffered severe damage. Sand covered most of the streets. I saw someone open their garage door, and there was sand filled to the top of the garage. The Women's Civic Club on 96th Street was damaged beyond repair, and the Nautilus Apartments at 89th Street washed out to sea. My dad had been rescued from the Avalon store by the local police and taken to the Borough Hall. He, Mayor Lang, and other councilmen worked through the storm, planning a recovery. By Saturday, there were 3 large bulldozers, 31 trucks already at work. We were fortunate to have little damage at home, but the stores sure were a mess, with sand and water damage. We even cleaned minnows out of all the floating glassware. I went back to school after some days of hard work with the feeling that the town had a great spirit of recovery, and it would not be long before it would return to being the seashore at its best.
This is the oldest building in Stone Harbor, and it's a real gem. In the late 1800s, the southern end of 7 Mile Island was barren, except for a lonely life-saving station. The waters off the New Jersey coast were alive with sailing ships carrying cargo and supplies to and from New York. Frequent storms and treacherous currents caused many wrecks. In 1895, architect George Tolman designed and built this U.S. life-saving station number 36, one of 41 along the Jersey coast. It replaced an earlier station from the 1850s. From 1895 to 1915, this building housed 1 keeper, Richard Ludlam, and 8 surfmen to look out for and help rescue ships in distress. These were tough, dedicated men who received many commendations for their bravery and success in saving lives. By 1915, with most ships motor-powered, the U.S. Coast Guard took over the building and used it as a training station until 1948. In 1948, the Stephen Ludlam American Legion Post 331 purchased the building and currently operates it now for monthly meetings and various community service projects. The Legion and its 250 members have beautifully restored the building and added a military museum filled with items from World War I, World War II, Korean, Vietnam, and Gulf Wars. This wonderful building, a registered landmark, is very much alive and well worth a visit.